Welcome to the Sencast. My name is Dale Pickles. I'm the host of the Sencast and the managing director of B Squared. If this is your first Sencast, then welcome. Welcome to the podcast. The aim of the podcast is really simple. We want to reach lots and lots and lots of people and help everyone learn more about special educational needs and disabilities. On this week's episode, we discuss how online provision can support neurodivergent girls. And my guest this week was Cathy Wassall, the founder and CEO of the Autistic Girls Network and also the founder of the Haven Online School for neurodivergent girls and non-binary young people. The Sencast is created and produced by us here at B Squared, and everyone knows we help schools to show those small steps of progress pupils with SEND make, and we do that across a wide range of abilities and ages. But do you know about our Autism Progress? This is a framework for helping profile someone's autism and how it impacts them. And it's based on CERT and looks at communication, social interaction, emotional regulation and flexible thinking. And Autism Progress also includes a wide range of strategies to help support that person as well. Visit the B Square website or click on the meeting link in the show notes to book a meeting with me to take you through how Autism Progress or our assessment software as a whole can help you. Now, let's get on with that podcast. This week, I am joined by Cathy Wassall, the founder and CEO of the Autistic Girls Network and also the founder of the Haven Online School. Cathy is neurodivergent and she is a mum to neurodivergent young adults, and she is also the author of Nurturing Your Autistic Young Person. The Autistic Girls Network has been supporting autistic individuals since 2017, both online and in person, and also offers lots of training for a variety of organisation. The Haven School provides online learning for neurodivergent girls and non-binary young people aged 12 to 17. Welcome to the show, Cathy.
Hello, thank you for having me, Dale.
It's always fun when I write these little intros, how much you lot do. You never seem to sit still, do you?
No, I haven't. Well, actually, I have sat still all morning in a meeting, but yes.
So, in this show, we're going to be discussing how online schools can support neurodivergent girls. But before we move on to this, let's briefly discuss autism in girls, what the difference is and how it can go wrong for them in school and what that looks like.
Yeah, sure. So, first of all, let's say there are going to be some generalisations here. In general, autism presents in a more internal way in girls, but of course there are exceptions, and there are girls who present in an external way, and those are probably the ones who are diagnosed very early, and there are boys, and certainly non-binary young people who present in both an external way and an internal way, and for those who present in an internal way, those are probably diagnosed late as well, or perhaps not picked up at all until they're adults. So for autistic girls in school, what tends to happen is that they aren't always identified at primary school, or perhaps they are identified as they get towards year 5, year 6, where things are starting to perhaps get a little bit more pressured. Puberty is obviously coming along then, hormones are whizzing around bodies. There is still very, very much research that needs doing into the 3 points in a female's life where hormones are whizzing around our bodies. So puberty, pregnancy, menopause, there's still an awful lot that we don't know about that. And as a neurodivergent woman, probably going through menopause at the moment, I can tell you it ain't fun. But for autistic girls at school, what tends to happen is that they aren't really noticed at primary school. Perhaps it's noticed that something is going on, but they aren't necessarily referred for an autism assessment at that point. Or if they are referred, unfortunately, the waiting list is so long that they don't actually get an assessment until after they've gone to secondary school. And that transition to secondary school is a huge, huge deal for them. We did a survey in our Facebook group quite a few years ago now that showed that the point we asked where is the point where either mental health crisis is really, really severe, or they stop being able to go to school at all. And most people said that it was the February half term of year 7. So they've gone through transition, they've got to Christmas, they've come back after Christmas, and they've realised it's not getting any better. In fact, it may be getting worse. And it was at that point where it all went pear-shaped for them. There are, of course, that's a generalisation, and of course there are exceptions. For my daughter, for example, she was very scaffolded. She went to a feeder primary school, and so half her class moved up with her to secondary school. She was in a class with two of her best friends. She never had to find her own way to the science lab, for example. So all those scary things she never had to do on her own. So she was scaffolded a bit, and really it was year 8 where it all went wrong for her. But in general, it's a little bit earlier.
Interesting. I was going to say that doesn't fit my daughter's pattern, and then I realised, oh no, my daughter started secondary school during COVID in 2020. So
Yes,
of course it was
COVID makes it
completely
all different. Yes, yes. There are lots of reasons why girls aren't necessarily picked up. Some of them are societal reasons, and the way that society thinks about girls compared to boys. Sorry to make it so binary there. The way that society expects girls to react, the way that society expects boys to kind of like mess a bit more and be noisier and more boisterous and less shy, and all those kind of reasons. But there's also the reason that we tend to keep it all inside. We tend to internalize things, and what we're finding is that for a lot of the time we're not actually finding autistic girls until they're already in crisis, and they're not being diagnosed until they're already in crisis. And that's because they were masking and trying desperately to fit in with their peers until they couldn't anymore. And either, it all exploded, or they stopped being able to mask those behaviours and they started to look more classically autistic. So that there is, we could talk forever about that.
Do you think we'll ever get to the point where we'll move away from autism and kind of the autistic girls presentation to actually more like ADHD, where we have like the inattentive and the hyperactive, to actually we have maybe disruptive autism and non-disruptive autism? Because I think for me that's a big difference between the boys and the girls. Is
Yes, maybe. But girls are ADHD girls are missed just as much. And they're usually the same people anyway. Of our cohort, we have a Facebook group of 32,000 people. And I haven't actually done one, maybe I should do one, but if I did a survey, I would guarantee you that over the 70% that research says maybe ADHD, both autistic and ADHD, I would guarantee you that over 70% of them are both autistic and ADHD. And maybe something else as well, maybe dyspraxic, maybe dyslexic.
because it is, I think, with the boys, as it starts to go wrong, they get more disruptive. It's more reports, more detentions, more arguing, less in school, and it's quite an explosive, fiery journey.
Yeah, and that's what can happen with girls too, if they're not having any of their needs met. It's like that fizzy Coke bottle that a lot of analogies use. They're getting shaken up and shaken up and shaken up, and sooner or later they are going to explode.
But I think the girls, again, generalising, it's never one size fits all. But I think the typical girl, again, from both my experiences and meeting people at the Autism and ADHD shows, which we were both at, is a lot of those girls kind of just disappear. They're not picking a fight, they're not disrupting, they're just disappearing out of school.
They're disappearing out of school, yes. And that was one of the reasons why we launched The Haven, was because we have so many young people in our community who are at home in their bedrooms or in the living room or not leaving the house, or all of those things, and unable to go to school or very much struggling to go to school, and their parents are fighting for support for them, maybe even fighting the LA about fines for their attendance. This year, 2025, we have seen more examples of them being threatened with custodial sentences, not just fines. And frankly, how does that help anybody? It certainly doesn't help the children who are not able to attend school if their parent was sent to prison.
But I'm guessing with a lot of these girls who kind of just that disappearing act out of school, it's they're not disappearing with lots of problems from the teacher's points of view. It's, as you said, it's all internalized. So the teacher's going, oh, she's a lovely girl. She gets on with her lessons. She does this. She's always a lovely model child. There's nothing wrong. I don't know why. And it's that, and it's because it's not presented externally that's why people think it isn't autism. It's bad parenting
No,
or
and often
whatever.
there seems to be a separation of mental health issues and an understanding from the school's point of view that, you know, that child is presenting with high anxiety or whatever it might be, does have mental health issues. And, you know, for example, in the case of my child, we were told, oh yeah, your child's mental health is more important than attending school, which was wonderful. And I was never threatened with a fine. This was some years ago now. But actually, there was no connection with she is suffering mental health issues because of her unmet needs. There was no investigation of why she was feeling that way. Even once she was under CAMS, and goodness knows it's hard enough to get under CAMS, even once she was under there, it took somebody else to suggest that she might be autistic. And that there is very little joined up thinking in that. And there should, you know, as we've kind of alluded to, there should also be joined up thinking in that if they are autistic, they may also be otherwise neurodivergent. They may also have hypermobility. They may also have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. They may also have POTS. There are those physical conditions that are highly co-occurrent with neurodivergence, and the problem is, without professionals understanding all of those connections, they're completely missed. So you may have a child who is having difficulty struggling with school and, for example, has a lot of joint pain or is unable to stand for long periods of time or can't do that sponsored walk or whatever it is. But there's no flag that says, oh, okay, they have those signs. Maybe we should think about neurodivergence. And, you know, we can't expect teachers to know everything if nobody is giving them training on those things.
So you mentioned hypermobility, and I'm going, yep, got that, and kind of got it. What were the other two?
Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, EDS, so very, very high co-occurrence with hypermobility. So the H, there are different types of EDS. I can't remember how many now, I'm afraid, but 13, something like that. But HEDS is hypermobile EDS. And there are a lot of people who have EDS that are hypermobile. It's to do with the collagen. It's a connective tissue condition. And
What's
of course,
EDS?
we have connective tissue all over our bodies. You know, even in our eyes, for example. So it can cause huge numbers of issues. But it's that, you know, there is almost nothing known about it. And if you go to a GP, it's quite likely that they won't know about the connection between neurodivergence and EDS, for example.
Learning. And what was the last one? POTS.
POTS, yes. Now you're going to ask me what POTS stands for,
I'm not
and it's
rough idea of what it is. I'm happy with.
yeah, it's when you become tachycardic, like have a high heart rate when you're standing up, for example. So it's to do with I'm presuming blood pressure fluctuating very quickly, and there's tests that they can do for it, but there is a high co-occurrence with neurodivergence.
I love about this podcast. Every day I learn something new. Okay,
Yes,
so
me too.
we've kind of covered a generalised, very brief version of autism in girls, and it's generally an internalised, but not always. So how do online schools support neurodivergent individuals? What's the benefit?
Okay, yeah. So first of all, I should say online school will not suit everybody. It wouldn't suit my own child. She would not have been able to attend online school. But the point is that nothing suits everybody, isn't it? There is no one size fits all. We need choice. We need to be able to offer autonomy to our young people, and we need to be able to offer them a provision that works for them. And actually, I've just been in a meeting all morning where Department for Education are investigating this at the moment, and one of the things that came up is that there is no provision really for our cohort. They can't cope with a mainstream, some of them can't cope with a mainstream provision, but they're perfectly capable of a mainstream curriculum, which makes special provision often not the place for them. And so they're stuck in between, in this space where there's no provision. And so that's why we launched the Haven, to be some kind of space. It won't work for everybody, but to be some kind of space, a very neuroaffirmative space where they can access a mainstream curriculum should they want to. There is choice at the Haven. You don't have to do GCSEs, for example. But they can do it in a way where they aren't going to be overstimulated, they aren't going to be overwhelmed. We understand the issues that they may have had. There may be a lot of trauma about school, for example. We try not to actually say the word school or teacher because it can be traumatic. A lot of our cohort, of course, we haven't started until September, so we're not actually open yet. A lot of our cohort will probably be out of school. They probably will have struggled. Some of them may have been out of school for a long time. It's a space for them to be able to feel like they belong. And of course, that's what's often missing. There are lots of sensory reasons why school can be very difficult for autistic girls, for example. But there's also a sense that they feel weird, they feel broken, they feel like they don't belong there. And we are creating a space where they very much belong. And I think that's really important.
It is. It definitely is. And I think, yeah, school teacher, traumatic. I definitely understand that. My daughter, who's just finished her GCSEs, is running away from that school as fast as she can, as a neurodivergent, amazing young lady.
Well, congratulations to her to making it to GCSEs.
But I've had so many conversations with parents at various shows you go to, and it's a choice is my child has to stay on and live through secondary so they can get GCSE, so they can work and do all those stuff, or they go to special where actually they can't do the GCSEs. It's kind of a supportive environment but no qualifications, or an unsupported environment with qualifications. And they're like, as you said, academically able. It's the environment, it's the other students, it's the sensory issues, it's social issues. But in the other environment, it's like if they go there, they're gonna miss out on the career they want to have.
Yes, absolutely.
And I think the
And of
online
course,
schools help fill that hole.
yes, and we have in the Haven we have an entrepreneurship strand, because if you're ADHD, you're 500% more likely to be an entrepreneur, and also because the employment statistics for autistic people are dire. I mean, we know that they're wrong. There's so many unrecognised autistic adults who are doing perfectly well, thank you, and have good jobs, but they aren't included in any statistics. But nevertheless, unemployment rate for autistic people is pretty dire. So being able to give them the opportunity to be able to perhaps run their own business or work from home or whatever it might be, is quite important in case they can't manage in an office, or in case working in an office makes them thoroughly miserable. But there are so many different options that we can offer. So not just entrepreneurship, but employability. Talking about being neurodivergent, we call it Neurodiversity University, and it's what we do a lot in our face-to-face groups. We talk about being neurodivergent. We talk about we try to build a positive neurodivergent identity to break that cycle of not feeling like you're good enough, or that you don't fit in, or that you don't work properly. And talking about things like alexithymia is really important. Would you like me to explain what alexithymia is?
Yeah,
So
please.
alexithymia is being unable to, or perhaps having real difficulty identifying and talking about emotions. And research says that over 50% of autistic people are alexithymic, so it should be the default. We should consider an autistic person to be alexithymic until we know otherwise. But most professionals, for example, I've never even heard of alexithymia, don't know that it exists, so certainly aren't accommodating for it, and certainly aren't considering that the autistic person that they might be working with might be alexithymic. And the problem is that this causes many misunderstandings and misassumptions, and a wide variety of them. But it's also really, really important that the young person themselves understands alexithymia if they're alexithymic, because what can happen is that they probably are also very hyper empathetic. Complete myth that autistic people don't feel empathy. Some autistic people maybe don't feel empathy, but some neurotypical people don't feel much empathy either.
Yep.
But a lot of autistic people, especially autistic girls, feel other people's emotions. They can take on other people's emotions as they walk into the room. But if you're alexithymic, you can't identify what that emotion is. I'm not alexithymic, and if I'm getting stressed, I can feel that. I can feel that build up in my body, and I can put strategies in place to do something about it. But if you're alexithymic, you don't feel that until it's so massive that it whacks you over the head. And then all you think is, oh my God, that's so terrible, I have to stop it. That feeling, I have to stop it. And if you're autistic and you're ADHD and you're impulsive, that may lead you to do something that you may regret.
See,
So telling people, telling people about alexithymia, if they are alexithymic, is really, really important, because in that situation, they may not do the impulsive thing. They may stop and say, oh, hang on, this is really awful, but I know why it's happening.
But it's a really we did discuss this when you started. I went, oh, I know what this is, and we discussed this before. And yet, you have children. If you show them any emoji, they'll tell you exactly what feeling it is. They recognise emojis. They've learnt. They know what it looks like on a face. What does it feel like in your body? No idea. How are you feeling? No idea, because my face isn't round, yellow, and making that silly face.
Yeah.
But I'm someone who, I generally know how I'm feeling, but sometimes, and I've had it this week, where I sit there, I'm just going, I'm going, why am I stressed? And it creeps up on me. So I'm either distracted or something else, and I recognise it and going, apparently I'm stressed this week. And I will deal with it. But a lot of the time I'm perfectly, but yeah, it's when it's negative and I'm busy, I don't always feel what's going on in my body, which is quite interesting. And again, more you learn about autism, more you learn about yourself. You're going, that's me, that's cool.
Yeah, and we can help people. It's not like I will never know anything about my emotions. We can help people by narrating what's happening with us. If something, we can help by associating emotions with context. So, for example, if you get I don't know, a job rejection letter, for example, you can say to your child, oh, I'm really disappointed because I didn't get that job and I really wanted it, and that makes me sad. And that it's not going to be an instant fix, but they build up that context kind of library, if you like, and they'll start to realize what emotions are associated with that. And so that means even if they're very alexithymic and they might only be able to recognize early developmental emotions, happy, sad, fear, anger, they can start building up that library a bit. So what we find often, and what certainly I found with my own child, is that she thinks that I'm angry much more often than I am. And she'll say to me, even now, she will say to me, well, Mum, why are you angry with me? And I'm not angry with her at all. Sometimes I'm sure that I am, but most of the time it's not anger. It's a different emotion, like, as I say, frustration or disappointment or something else. And it's not actually directed at her at all.
Well, sometimes she's at the top of the stairs and you're at the bottom. You're just trying to make yourself heard. But because you're saying it in a stronger voice, it means you're angry.
Yes, yeah. And it's because she's doing things by context. So she's looking at my face and she's thinking, okay, well, I'm not smiling or laughing, so I'm not happy. I'm not crying, so I'm not sad. Nothing has happened in this context to be scary, so I'm not scared. So the only one left, logically, is anger. And we find that this happens quite a lot. That's when I say things like that at training or parent workshops, a lot of people say, oh, my child does that too. So if your child does that, that's probably why.
But I suppose that's not only mixed with reading your emotions, but also that probably lots of experiences in their life where they've done things wrong and they're thinking,
Yeah,
I've done this is my fault that she's angry. And it's
yeah.
that sort of going based on previous experiences. When someone's angry, it's because I didn't do the work, so this must be my fault. I don't know what I've not done wrong yet. I'm sure I'll find out in a
Yeah, and
minute
it's
what I
it's
haven't done.
probably all mixed up with rejection sensitivity dysphoria as well, which comes pretty much hand in hand with ADHD,
Yep.
and this idea that it, like you say, it must be my fault when actually it wasn't anything to do with them at all. They just happened to be in the vicinity. Um, but yeah, it's that kind of taking responsibility for all the bad things that are happening, when actually it's not their fault at all.
So I suppose with the go back to online schools is it removes two big aspects of school: the sensory stuff of the building, noise, distractions, all of that stuff. You're much more in charge of your environment you're in,
Yeah.
and also the social aspect. That was the thing my daughter struggled
Yes.
with. Girls saying
Yes.
what they said, not because they meant it, but because it's the right thing to say in that situation. But they didn't mean it. And they walked out that classroom and then said something completely different because someone else was next to them. That sort of, all that disappears.
And all of that's really hard to deal with. And it's probably one of the reasons why, age, let's say 10 to 15, is so hard for neurodivergent girls, is because they're in that process of changing from child to adult, I guess, in that process of adolescence. Everyone around them in their friendship group is changing. All of the interests that they had, which were so important, and which your young person may have tried really hard to fit in with and studied and scripted and all of those things are suddenly changing. And, maybe they're more interested in boys, or, you know, more interested in particular, I don't know, singer or pop group or something. Suddenly it's like the rug has been pulled out from under you because everything's changing, and we all, as we know, transitions are really, really hard.
But it's not only that I find with my daughter is the girls she's kind of struggling with are also everyone's had the rug pulled out from under them because everything they thought it was, they're changing, their hormones are changing. No one's fully in control. You're all
No,
struggling.
I
You're
mean,
all
that's
having those
adolescence,
arguments with
isn't
your
it?
parents.
Not being in control.
And then you're trying to deal with the people who aren't in control. Going, just come and give me a rule book here. Just give me a rule book and I'll be fine.
Yes, yes. No, it is very, very hard. And we don't really understand what's going on. They're not really being helped to understand what's going on because they've not been identified probably as being neurodivergent. Friendships have been identified in lots and lots of research as being a really, really tricky situation for autistic people, but being really, really important to particularly autistic girls. Lots and lots of research has shown that that's one of the most important things to them, is having friendships and fitting in friendship groups. And so when that becomes difficult, it exacerbates everything else. So all of the anxiety that you're already feeling is magnified because you can tell that your friendship group is not working for you and that you might be rejected from it, which unfortunately frequently happens.
And my daughter actively chose to mask. She actively chose because that would allow her to fit in and have
Yeah.
those friends and do that. So although it was hard work and stressful, it outweighed because she would then appear to be popular and have friends than
Yeah.
being alone with no friends. So masking is one of those things. People say masking is bad. It's sort of like it depends on the situation. Ultimately, masking is bad, but you have to take a decision in the moment. Is it better to mask and be involved, or not mask and be alone? The idea is you shouldn't have to mask. But it's that sort of decisions my daughter was making, along with all of her hormones and everything else. Actually, with all this going on, the education aspect wasn't the stressful part of my daughter's life at all. It wasn't
No,
the focus of her life. She was just
yeah,
surviving.
and often it's those unstructured times as well that are more difficult than lessons. Break times, lunch times, before school, after school, they can be much more difficult to navigate than a lesson, because in a lesson at least you know supposedly, you know what's going to happen. You know that everyone will be sitting down. You know that the teacher will be speaking. You know that you'll be expected to write things down. Whereas when you venture out into that corridor or into that playground, anything could happen.
My daughter was quite lucky. They always seem to sit in the same place and they seem to have designated seats, so she was quite good.
Yeah.
But before school, who's she going to walk to school with? I'll walk to school with them. They're running late, but I need to leave at this time, so I need to get here then. Do I wait for them? And it was just watching her trying to deal with who she walked to work school with, the stress.
Yeah.
And then I think she got to the point where she finally saw that actually it's not worth it. Just stick a pair of headphones in and walk on your own.
Yeah.
If you bump into them, you bump into them.
What we found, I've got one boy and one girl, and what I found is that the whole kind of, not just sleepovers, but the whole kind of going back to somebody's house after school was much, much more complicated with the girls, much more complicated. And even though it probably was really bad for my daughter, because she would mask, she wanted to do everything. She didn't want to ever say no to any of them. Very much a fawning behaviour, which we know that is very common in autistic girls. Fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. And she would fawn almost every time. She would say what people wanted to hear. She would do what people wanted to do. We had a really awful experience once where she went to somebody's house who had a girl who had much older brothers, and they ended up watching a horror film, and this caused us months and months of stress and trauma, because she couldn't say no. She couldn't say that she didn't like it. She just stayed there and was kind of mentally tortured.
We recommend for anyone, we set up a code word that my daughter sent that code word to us. It meant we need to phone her to say we have to go out somewhere, we need to get her or something. Not an emergency,
Yeah,
but
that's
it
a very
was,
good
we're
plan.
going out now, I can't pick you up later, can we pick you up now? And it was she just sent one word and it meant she could get out of it without it looking like she wanted to
Yeah,
get out
it
of
wasn't
it.
her. Yeah, exactly. No, that's a really good plan.
But it is, I just remember being a boy and just waking up, washing, going to school, kind of
At
thing,
least you
getting
washed.
home, sometimes watch TV, eat, watch TV, go to bed. And the stuff my daughter has to deal with, A, because she's a girl, and the social stuff, B, her body, C, the modern society and the social media and all those expectations on her. Um, I am very grateful I was born a boy and much earlier in
Yeah,
life.
it's very complicated now. I mean, there's huge advantages to living now. I remember when I was 21, I think I was 21, I went to Japan and I stayed there for 3 years teaching on the JET program. And there was no mobile phones. There was no, well, there was internet, but most people didn't have the internet. And I used to have to set up a phone time with my parents that we stuck to every week. Otherwise, the time difference meant that we'd never catch each other. And my life would have been completely different if I'd have had a mobile phone and the internet. I would have been so much less lonely. So that
But
I don't think
but
I would go back to being without it.
but on the flip side, you were comfortable going over there and being out of contact for a week at a time. Whereas now there's a bit more anxiety. If I can't call her at this time or she
Yes.
doesn't respond within an hour, now there's something wrong. And I think for our mental health, you walked out of school, I'll see you tomorrow. Mind blank, mind relax at home, get on with what I want to do. Now it's that message can come through. I think overall, yeah, in terms of being able to contact, it's lovely, but I think there's negative bits in there.
Oh, there's
But
definitely negative bits. Yeah.
But I think that online, getting rid of all the sensory stuff, getting rid of that social stuff, you can just focus on the academic. But I
We can
also,
focus on the academic for sure, but we also, an important part of the Haven is our passion led, project led part. So Monday to Thursday is academic y, Friday is our passion led, project led day. So that is where we really hook ADHD hyperfocus and autistic monotropism, and we co-design. So we do everything in 5-week blocks. We co-design with our learners a 5-week project about something that they are really interested in, and we map it to English, science, and maths curriculum. We have a competency framework that we've matched to those curriculum, and they are in charge of their learning. So they co-design it. They pick the 5 competencies that they're going to tick off for doing that project. They, check in with their tutor, of course, and their tutor will ultimately sign off on whether they've matched those competencies or not. But they are in charge of it. And then at the end of the 5 weeks, that project goes into their digital portfolio, and they can take it away with them to whatever they are going to do next. And I would love it if at some point in the future universities will accept that kind of project instead of a qualification, or as well as a qualification. That would be wonderful.
There needs to be a lot more project-based learning for so many reasons.
Yes.
I think it prepares them for life at college, life at uni, where it's a lot more independent. But also you get to do something you're passionate about. But I've looked on the kind of the website, and there's not just the academic stuff, because there's life stuff and all that. And I think one of the things when you aren't in school, when you're not having to socialise forced, you still need to build all those social skills.
Yeah, absolutely. So at the end of every day, we'll have kind of like a chill down session. I'm not sure if chill down is actually a word, but if it's not, then I've made it up.
Now.
So in that session, it might be just as simple as playing a game, like playing online Uno, or just having a chat or something, so they get to know their cohort. We will have interest-based chat groups. So if you love Taylor Swift, you can go in that chat group and you can talk to your heart's content about Taylor Swift with other people who understand and who also love Taylor Swift, and may even you never know, may even be able to tell you something you don't know about Taylor Swift, although that's unlikely. But we also have you touched on it, preparing for adulthood strand. So we do things like talking about managing money, talking about credit cards, and getting into debt and things like that, because that is a big issue with our cohort. Perhaps more boys than girls for some reason, but that's a big issue, and nobody really tells you that if you sign up for that credit card where this bank wants to give you, it's like they're giving you £3,000, that you can spend. Nobody really tells you what that means when you spend that £3,000 and you then have the debt, which then has compound interest on it. Nobody actually explains what that looks like and how you're going to pay back that £3,000, because they've given you that money, haven't they?
I'm laughing.
So yeah, that kind of thing.
I was 18, credit card, £2,000. I hit the limit in under a week.
Yes. Well, yes, I also have experience.
It's literally going, it's your autism, ADHD. I'm like, okay, that makes more sense.
That's why. That's impulsivity for you. Yes.
But I'm not saying it's not my fault.
That's the problem, isn't it? It has to be. It's like an itch that has to be scratched instantly.
Yes.
And then by the time you actually get the thing, you might not really be so interested in it as you were. That's the problem.
But it's one of those things. It's not me saying it's not my fault, not my responsibility, but a bit of support around that, a bit of understanding to help me learn about me.
Yeah, a bit of scaffolding. That's what's needed.
That'd be lovely.
And if nobody ever told you, if nobody ever said, or there are unscrupulous people who will try to give you, isn't giving you money, of course, but who will try to give you what seems like money that you can spend without worrying about it, then most people would just go and spend the money, wouldn't they?
But also,
nobody's actually explained what's going to happen.
Also, if someone said to me, not only that, but also with your ADHD, you're more likely just to spend it on stuff you don't need because you can, and you don't think. If somebody kind of went, I've now learnt, and I now have a thing where if I really want to do something, it kind of sits in my head, and if I keep coming back to it, then I will do it. But it's normally, that's a year-long process. I'm not saying everything is, and my wife will definitely agree that I have lots of stuff around the house which wasn't thought about for that long, but is there, and is now stuck with us.
Yes, well, we have a fully neurodivergent house, so yes, I can identify.
But I'm happy and not in debt, which is good. But it
Yes.
is, I think, that learning. Yes, if you're lucky, you can learn and survive and come out the other side. But it's not always. You're not always that fortunate.
No, no, you're not. But at least, we talk about things like energy accounting. So, giving people the strategies to think about the challenges that they have, but also to think about the things that bring them joy. What is it that brings you joy? What is it that drains your emotional battery, but also what powers it up again? And so if you practice energy accounting, you can start to make your weeks or even your months balance up. So if you're doing something which you think is dreadful, I don't know what it might be, a hospital appointment or something, you can back that up with like a day before and a day after where you're doing something that really brings you joy, and it kind of negate, not maybe it doesn't negate, but it goes some way to bringing back some of the energy that you used up by going to that hospital appointment.
And sometimes I always used to hate January. January was a horrible month, long month. But I used to work at IKEA. We got paid a month early at Christmas, so sometimes it was 6 weeks between paychecks. And I used to just sit and go, I'm going to do overtime, I'm going to earn money, and I can spend it when it's warm.
Yeah.
And I think that energy and looking at not only is it got to be a day-to-day bad positive, but actually throughout the year, I'm doing this so I can have this later, and there's a cost now, but I get the benefit. It's energy, it's working that all out yourselves. And the same with school is you sit there and say, why am I doing this? It's like, because actually you do need those qualifications. If you don't have them, it will impact your entire life. You don't have to get them this year, but you will need them. And that's just the way the world is. So how can we get through it? How can we survive? What is it we can put in between at half terms, school holidays, that you can really enjoy and look forward to, that when you're doing that stuff that you're not enjoying, you've got something nice coming up.
Yes, absolutely. But also we can make the process easier. We can, so for example, live lessons are recorded in the Haven. So if you miss part of a live lesson because you absolutely had to go outside and pace, for example, you can just put a quick message in the chat to the teacher, I must go and pace, and they know where you are. And you can catch up on that bit that you've missed later, or there is a transcription and you can process it in a different way if you have different processing needs. In the software that we use, you can personalize it to you. So if you're dyslexic, for example, and you prefer things on a different color background, you can change the background, you can change the font, you can change the size of the font, but only for you. It's not changing for everybody. So that kind of accessibility is important. But also for for exams, we'll be using Pearson Online, and for that, it's already chunked down. It's already very modular, so you don't need to spend precious revision time chunking everything down. It's already done for you. You can do your exams at different sittings, so they have 3 sittings through the year. You can split the 2 English papers up, for example. So you could do one in, I can't remember what months they are, but let's say you could do one in November and one in May. If you have to retake, you can retake just one and you can bank your highest score. But perhaps most useful for neurodivergent learners is that you can have remote invigilation, so you can take your exam at home. No going to some traumatic school, no travelling for the first time to an exam centre. You can take it at home. And that's, I think, really, really useful for a lot of our cohort.
Again, you're saying lots of things which are all quite small, but they all make a really big difference.
They do.
Being comfortable at home, very big difference. Not having, again, just my daughter going to school before her GCSEs is she had to be there at 8, but I was dropping off at 20 to 8, so she could walk in with someone, not walking alone, and she wouldn't be the last one there and everyone be settled down. So there was like chess games in her head just about arriving at the revision lesson before the exam. And then there's where
Yeah.
she sat in the exam hall and she seemed to be at the front, which was the worst thing ever. And that's a lot of what she didn't talk about the exam, but where she sat and people walking past and all. It was just distracting for her that she couldn't concentrate as much on that exam.
Yeah. I mean, let's face it, none of us would want to go back to those exam halls, would we? I
No.
don't think I could bear it now. But yeah, I mean, having all of those distractions and stresses taken away. I mean, I remember when I was at university and we had massive, massive exam halls, which I'm sure everybody hated. There was a person behind me who, right at the beginning, must have had a panic attack or something, started crying really loudly, must have been absolutely terrible for them. They were taken out and presumably couldn't take that exam at the time. But of course, it affected everybody else in the entire hall as well. It was horrible. If you have any kind of empathy, you would have been feeling really dreadful for this person, and it distracted you from whatever you were trying to think about in terms of answering a question. So all of those distractions are really hard, and I guess there will be distractions at home. Your dog might jump on you or whatever it might be. And you do have remote invigilation. You do need to have an extra device looking at your laptop screen to make sure that you're not cheating. So you do have that as well, but you could practice it in advance. But in general, it's going to be much more. Perhaps relaxing is not the word because you're still doing an exam.
You're in control. I think it's that
Yes, you have
control
the
and that
autonomy.
certainty. So you may have a dog, but your mum will take it out for a walk.
Yes.
So
No,
you
your
kind of
mum
know
has to be there. So,
mum
or
has to be there.
someone has
Someone.
to be there. Of course, it doesn't have to be your mum.
But you start as soon as you have that control, that certainty, so you can literally listen to your favourite music in your bedroom. You're there. You can take your headphones out or turn the speaker, whatever. Walk down, and you're in the exam. There's not a
Yeah.
big gap in between. There's a lot of control in there. And as I've learned over lots of podcasts, the more control we have, the better we are with it.
Oh, autonomy is absolutely the most important thing for neurodivergent learners. I've been doing lots of conversations with parents and sometimes young people, and I was sent a list of questions from a young person just this week, and they said, I can't remember everything that it was, but something like, can I chew gum? Can I fidget? Can I walk around? Can I lie on the floor? Can I go outside? And I said, well, the only issue might be going outside. You just need to tell the teacher where you are, so they don't worry that something's happened. But otherwise, why would I care if you're obviously I didn't phrase it like that. Why would I care if you are chewing gum or if you're fidgeting? I want you to fidget. And I don't mind if you lie on the floor for the whole lesson as long as you can engage like that. And if you need to type something, you can type it. It's no problem whatsoever. So there is that flexibility that you can have where you don't have to follow the rules of a particular school. Obviously you don't have to wear school uniform. Obviously, you don't have to wear shoes if you don't want to, and all of those things. But there are little extras that that can happen that can make it feel like a safe space. And of course, we don't want it to be just a physically safe space. We want it to be a psychologically safe space, and that will take time. That there's no magic wand to make that happen. That will take time. But so far, I'm not saying that this will always be the case, but so far all of our core educators are all neurodivergent themselves. So they very much understand. Most of them have neurodivergent children who have had their own issues at school. They understand things like not being able to turn the camera on, things like not being able to speak out, being situationally mute. They understand things like that. And those things are not a barrier to being able to take part. There are other ways that you can engage. And obviously, we would like it if they feel psychologically safe enough to be able to turn their camera on and to be able to join in a conversation. But that will come. That will come with feeling safer. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen straight like that. You can't just wave a wand and make that happen.
That phrase, I don't care, is one of those like pull your socks up phrases, but I don't think most people realise it. Because it's basically saying, can I do this? I don't care. It's basically saying, I don't care about you. You don't matter. And it was a Ted Lasso one where he said it. He goes, no, I do care. But I care he goes, I don't know if he used the phrase, I care enough. I care enough that I want you to be happy and safe. It's not I don't care.
Yeah.
It doesn't affect me, but I care that you want to be happy and safe. So can I turn my webcam on? I do care. I care enough that I want you to be safe enough that you feel confident enough to just turn that webcam on. But what I'm saying is I'm not applying any pressure, but that I don't care is one of those phrases I think when we say it, we mean it doesn't affect me. You can do what you want. I'm perfectly happy. But it's not always heard that way.
Yeah.
And it's one of those ones, as I think about it, it's like pulling your socks up or chin up, give yourself a pat on the back. It's one of those phrases which, it's a bit of a phrase, and there is a meaning behind it, but actually take it literally, it's saying, I don't care what you do because you're not important. But that's the whole point of the school, is you do care, but you understand.
And we know how important they are. You know, it's our kind of one of our taglines is for brilliant minds, an online school for brilliant minds, and they are brilliant minds, but then they're not being nurtured in the right way at the moment, and that's nothing to do with individual teachers. That is purely our system, our education system. That is the problem. It's a systemic problem, and it's a training problem, and it's a workforce development problem. It's not an individual person problem.
It's very much a societal problem.
Yeah.
Because lots of expectations from lots of places are put on these young people that they're trying to fulfill, and they're not equipped to fulfill them.
Yes, and it causes huge amounts of trauma. And, you know, part of the problem for the neurodivergence task and finish group, which I think I've got their name right, that I was in a meeting with this morning for the entire morning, part of the problem that they've got is they've been given the remit by the government to figure out the best way to get more pupils with SEND, or rather more neurodivergent pupils in their case, into mainstream schools, which, as we all know, is what the government have said that they want to happen. Whether that's right or wrong, that's what the Task and Finish group has been asked to advise on. And they are saying all the right things, really. They're saying all the things that I would want them to say, but actually their remit is not about the children who are out of school at the moment. It's not about the children who are in crisis at the moment. It's not even about, you know, where do those in-betweeners sit, those ones who can manage a mainstream curriculum but can't manage a mainstream provision, and therefore won't fit into a specialist or a special provision either. You know, it's not even about that. It's only strictly looking at, you know, hubs in mainstream schools. And unfortunately, you can design the most fantastic hub in a mainstream school, but it's still in a mainstream school. It's still in a school with, you know, potentially thousands of pupils. It's still got that noise. It's still got that element of being surrounded by people. You know, you still have to go to the lunch hall, perhaps, even if you can go at different times. You still have to get into school and out of school. You won't be able to have all your classes in the hub. You won't be able to have science lessons, for example, in the hub. So you will have to go into the mainstream school. And all of those problems still will exist. And those people who couldn't manage in a mainstream school before may still not be able to manage. But the problem is that there is no, nobody is considering, there's no task and finish group for those children who are out of school right now, who are classed as missing. I mean, officially they're not classed as missing, but who are called in the media missing children in education. Nothing is happening for them.
It's the same thing you hear again and again. There's a problem with SEND. Cool, let's look at the SEND system and find out what needs to change about that. It's the SEND system that's breaking. It's like, no, it's like if everything else changed, this wouldn't be a problem. I'm not saying everything has to dramatically change, but it's the student struggling. You don't fix the student. The student is struggling for a reason. You look at what the reason is and you work on that. And I think that's a bit they always miss. They always go, oh, it's SEND.
Yeah. And it's
like,
tremendously worrying that they're thinking about taking away EHCPs and just creating these hubs in mainstream, because then they'll be supported. Well, but what happens if they're not?
it's one of the things is Okay, so it's got to say a whole bit together. I'm all for reducing EHCPs if the children aren't failed, which means they require an EHCP.
Yes, exactly.
But I don't see how the government is going to change that if part, the not failing them.
Yes.
That's the bit.
Well, indeed. And there's always two things that have to go on, isn't there? There always has to be a short-term plan dealing with immediate crisis, and there has to be a long-term plan. And it's absolutely right that there be a long-term plan, but in the meantime, the media has spent the last 12 months moaning about these children not attending school, and successive governments, not just this government, have kind of come up with all of these media campaigns about attendance, which rightfully got thoroughly criticised. But they're not doing anything about those children. They're not helping those children. They're just basically saying you have to go back to mainstream school. But mainstream school is what traumatised them.
The money is not there to keep continuing the students, to support the students who failed, and to be the proactive, preventative support to prevent failing others. That's
Indeed.
the problem. The money needs to be there to be preventive, proactive, supporting, which means a big change in every single school. That's not going to be there. There's going to be no accountability around that. So I'd like the idea of reducing HCPs because it means we haven't failed children and they are ultimately not going to have the trauma. So I'm all for it, but I don't think they understand what is actually fully required to achieve it.
Yes. I mean, I'm fully in agreement with you.
Let's wrap
good
it up
it may
there,
do
then.
us.
I feel we're going segueing off, and I think that would be a very long discussion.
Sorry. But maybe I should say, to segue it back a little bit, is that, the Haven and other online schools are available. The Haven and other online schools are much cheaper as an option than a specialist school. So we are a specialist school. We will only be working with neurodivergent learners. We are very, very specialised in the educators that we use. Our educators will either be neurodivergent themselves, or they will have access to all of Autistic Girls Network's school training, which is now a quite considerable library of training. So there is no way that we will be employing anybody that doesn't really understand neurodivergence. And so we are very specialist, but we are much, much cheaper than sending them to a face-to-face specialist school. So I'm not using that as an argument. I'm not necessarily saying it's a good thing that we're cheap, but in terms of finding finance for budgets for SEND, at least allowing the option of online school will make the budget smaller.
But I think you're not really competing with special schools because it's a different kind of. The specialist school is supportive. It's reducing lots of things, but often the academic outcomes aren't always there because of the teaching,
indeed.
number of students in that area. It's a locational, geographical problem.
It is, and our flagship special school, in my county, if you go there for the open day, they will tell you about all of these GCSEs they do and what great results they get. But as soon as they get to sixth form age, that's it. They can do retakes, they can do functional skills, they can do, preparing for adulthood type stuff. They can't do A-levels, they can't do a baccalaureate, they can't do any kind of BTEC. There's no further academic education for them post 16 at that school, even though they have a sixth form.
And we know that if you don't support someone where they need that support, they're going to get dysregulated. Yeah. If you support them where they don't need support, they're going to get So in reality, you want to be challenging these children. And there are children who can do A-levels, get A stars, 9s, whatever it is at A-levels or GCSEs, but just can't cope in that environment. And they need that challenge. And I think that's what, with the online schools, the fact you can have someone with that ability be able to teach at that level, there will be a small number of children across the country that will suit. And the only way is an online school.
Yeah, exactly.
As long
But,
as, for me,
it's all about having options, isn't it?
yes, it's what
Having
works
choice.
for the right child. And it can't be academic. You touch on the life skills, the project based. There's lots of other skills they need to learn, even if they feel they're never going to leave their bedroom or their house. That's right now. That may change, and we need those
Absolutely, that may
skills.
change. And we see this all the time in our face to face groups. We have girls, very often, probably more often than not, we have girls and non binary young people coming along who have been out of school for ages. Maybe they haven't really left their house much. We had somebody come directly from being discharged from inpatient, which I'm not recommending, by the way. And it's it's really wonderful to be able to watch what usually happens. I can't say that we have 100% success rate, because nobody does, and there are other factors involved. But often what happens is that they are very, very quiet. They need support coming in. Maybe we go out and meet them. Maybe their parent stays with them. But they come again the next time and they're a little bit more relaxed. By about the fourth session, you can't shut them up. They are completely in that space. And I had a parent say to me last night, I was somewhere else, at somebody else's event, and she said that for her children, well, she has two children that come to our groups. For her children, it was almost like seeing them drop the mask and just feeling able to be part of a community, and feeling like they belonged, and feeling like they didn't have to put on an act all the time. And she said it was just like, she said you could almost visibly see them relax. And that's, obviously I can't tell you that that's what happens in the Haven yet, because we're not open yet. But that's what I aim to happen in the Haven. And it will take some time, but that's what we want to happen. Is we want it to be a psychologically safe space, a space where people really feel that they belong, a space that they can relax enough to be able to learn, because when you're constantly in fight or flight, you can't learn.
No, you need that. And I do a mental health club, youth club night on Monday nights, and it's the same thing. People arrive, they're quiet, a couple of weeks in, they realise they're in a safe place, they share, they be themselves. It's amazing. Well, let's wrap it up. Thank you for coming on the show today. Always love discussing anything neurodivergent. And it's always good to shine a light on those differences, typically between boys and girls, but it's not a clear-cut defined biological difference. Girls can present one way and boys can present another. It's a typical. And there are other options other than being in mainstream and specialist. There are options, and people need just to have a think, what is the right thing for me and my child?
Absolutely.
As always, I've got a load of links to share about the Autistic Girls Network and the Haven School, so you can find out more about them and also follow them on social media, and you'll find those in the show notes wherever you listen to the podcast or on our website. If you're not following us on social media, please do. You'll find us on Twitter, I'm still calling it that, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Blue Sky, lots of them. Just search for the Sendcast and you'll find us. The Sendcast is created and produced by us here at B Squared, and we help to show the small sets of progress pupils with SEND make. But do you know about Autism Progress? This is our framework for helping profile a pupil's autism and how it impacts them. It's based on certs and looks at communication, social interaction, emotional regulation, and flexible thinking. And it also includes a wide range of strategies to help support the pupils. Visit the B Squared website or click on the meeting link in the show notes to book a meeting with me to take you through the software and what it can do for you. But at the end, as always, thank you for listening, and we'll be back next week with another episode of the Sendcast. It's goodbye from me.
And goodbye from me too.
Bye, everyone.